Hello there, this is Daniele from Toolchefs, and in this video we're going to talk about the licensing for Atoms Crowd. So if you go on our website, you will find the pricing page, and under the Studios tab you will find all the licenses that are available for studios. So we have licenses for the traditional VFX workflow, then we have the real-time licenses for Atoms Real-Time, so to be used in Unreal with Atoms Unreal. And then also you can contact us if you want to use Atoms for broadcast and games. So the real-time licenses here, they actually apply just for purposes where you don't actually create a game or app and then sell it publicly. So even if you can get the access to the libraries, these two packages down here, they are not actually available for studios that want to make games. So for those kind of purposes, you should contact our sales team. But then we have the VFX licenses, and anyway, even if you use the real-time one, you're gonna always have the Atoms RT license. So it's a good idea just to understand how this licensing works. So I've prepared a little presentation. So here we are. Let's start. So for Atoms Real-Time, we have just one single license, as we said already, and it's the Atoms RT. So usually these licenses are getting checked out when you create an agent group, in this case so Atoms RT. If you create an Atoms Cache Actor that is license free, so there's no license required. It's important to know though that if you have an Atoms RT PLE license, whenever you create assets like agent types and so on, they get marked in a certain way so that they can't be used with the full Atoms RT license. Okay, so then we have the licensing for Atoms VFX. So for the VFX workflow, even in this case, we provide the PLE licenses, but they basically they fall outside of this licensing workflow. They just work as standalone, so you can use them in any supported application, but they have all the limitations that are listed in the documentation. So we designed the licensing for Atoms VFX so that basically it's the most cost effective for customers. So usually, of course, the procedural license is less expensive than the framework license. Is a bit it's more expensive than the procedural, but it's cheaper than the Atoms VFX license. And then finally, we have the Atoms VFX license. So usually, when you for the Atoms procedural, it gets checked out in a few different stages. So when you load the plugin in Maya, Houdini, Gaffer, Claris, or Katana. So for instance, if you load Atoms Maya, the plugin in Maya, then you actually automatically check out a procedural license, and the same thing happens in Houdini or Claris or Katana and Gaffer. When you render with our procedural, so if you render with Arnold using our procedurals and so on, then you are using a procedural license. And also if you use our APIs for doing standard actions like reading metadata files or cache files and so on. So this would be with Python or C++. At this stage, if you have the plugin loaded, for instance in Maya or Houdini, if you create an Atoms proxy node, you are still using just the Atoms procedural node. So the Atoms proxy node is the node that can be used for Lightning, or anyway for having a reference in your scene with like of your crowd, because the Atoms proxy node just reads a cache and just displays it in the viewport. You can't edit it. You can just maybe change the variation of agents, change the LODs, do a few other things, but you can't really do any live simulation with that. Okay, so then for the framework license, the framework license is getting checked out whenever you run some commands in Maya and Houdini, like using the skeleton exporter and the animation exporter. In Maya also when you run the CFX simulation exporter and so on. The framework license is also checked out when you run Maya and Houdini in batch mode. So if you have Atoms running a simulation in Maya or Houdini in batch mode, you're using a framework license. So for instance, if you want to, if you create a simulation scene in Maya or Houdini, and then you want to cache it out, but you want to do it on the farm, the moment that scene is opened on the farm and then an agent group is found in that scene on the farm, you're just using the Atoms framework license, not a full license. Also, the framework license is going to be checked out when you're going to use our APIs for writing metadatas or for running standalone sims. So this could be even outside of my Houdini. If you write a Python script that runs a simulation or a C++ executable that does that, then you're using just a framework license. And then finally, if you are in my Houdini, whenever you create an agent group, you're actually checking out an Atoms VFX license. So basically this is when actually you're gonna start building a simulation, so you need the full license and so on. It's also worth noting that the license checkout system for the VFX licenses is also described on the documentation. So if you search for license checkout, VFX license solely on the documentation, you will find this page where there is also extra information that you might find useful if you want to know more about how the VFX licenses checkout work. And this is all for this video. Thanks for watching.